statement.
Thank you, Chair Stauber, and thank you to our witness and also our later witnesses for being here today. This committee has a profound responsibility to mitigate the impacts of the climate crisis. We have the unique privilege of being the committee responsible for overseeing our nation's public lands and federal fossil fuel development. As it stands, nearly a quarter of the United States' current carbon pollution comes from fossil fuel production on federal lands and waters. The U.S. is responsible for more historic emissions than any other country in the world. We have a responsibility to lead in winding down use of fossil fuels, and that starts with production on federal lands. Failing to do something about these emissions would be a lost opportunity on a timeline that we cannot get back. As overwhelming as the climate crisis may feel, we can do something about it. In the face of this global existential challenge, communities are doing what they must. They are organizing. And around the world, mass movements of everyday people, frontline activists, organized labor, and others are coming together to demand a change. And their message is clear. It's time to stop the end of fossil fuels. Leaders in some parts of the world are listening. The UN General Assembly, which is also meeting this week in New York City, is focused explicitly on climate change this year. UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres has called on countries to, quote, leave oil, coal, and gas in the ground where they belong. Countries like France, Spain, and Belize have all passed laws to end fossil fuel extraction, and yet the US continues to approve new leases at record rates. Here in this committee, we're here to discuss that very topic, the federal onshore oil and gas program. The latest announcements from the administration on oil and gas are welcome steps in the right direction to help get our carbon pollution under control. In July, the Bureau of Land Management announced new proposed regulations to bring long overdue reforms to the oil and gas program. And earlier this month, the administration announced it would cancel the remaining oil and gas leases in the Arctic National Wildlife Refuge and protect 13 million acres of the National Petroleum Reserve in Alaska. These efforts did not happen overnight. For BLM's oil and gas rule, we have people to thank and communities across the country that are beginning to organize on an everyday, person-to-person level. And for the Alaska News, I want to give enormous credit to the young organizers who have tirelessly pushed the administration to do more to protect the Arctic. Of course, many of us were disappointed to see the administration approve the Willow Project, which will have significant impacts on the climate and on essential ecosystems. But it is the organizing of everyday people alongside Indigenous Alaskans affected first and foremost by development and on the front lines of the climate crisis that secured these other victories. Organizing amplifies the voices of people. It empowers individuals and communities to multiply their influence, to speak up, mobilize, and demand accountability from those in power. I ask unanimous consent to enter into the record this statement from the Gowichan Steering Committee statement in support of the cancellation of the leases in the Arctic National Wildlife Refuge. My colleagues across the aisle will have a different view of the oil and gas program. They'll say that we need to drill more and give away more and more of our federal lands to no end to big oil to ensure so-called energy dominance. But the American people know that security will come when we create an equitable, clean energy economy that puts families and communities first and ends our reliance on a global extractive industry. Of course, we have a long way to go to create a just transition away from fossil fuels. But these recent victories are a lesson in the power of determined, unwavering advocacy. Thank you again to our witnesses, and I yield back.